Welcome to the Domestic Draft Podcast. I'm Evan Bierman here with Dan Sloak. We got a very special guest coming on, a former Bear, coming on to talk some Bears with us. And we got a special beer here to welcome him as well. It's a Long Snapper IPA. It's from Tight Head Brewing out of Mundelein. It gets a 3.75 on Untapped, 6% ABV. It's a West Coast style IPA that was brewed in collaboration with Long Snapper Patrick Mannelly. And Patrick Mannelly is our next guest. He's the longest tenured player in Chicago Bears history, one of the top 100 Bears of all time.
That's right.
He's at Patrick Mannelly on Twitter. Pat, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, you bet. When you guys said beer, you had me. I said, sure, I'll come on anytime you want to chat beer.
Love it.
Yeah, so let's get into it. How did this happen, man? How did the collaboration with Tight Head happen for the Long Snapper IPA?
I've always been a fan of beer, and I was a Bud Light guy through college. You know, simple beer.
Okay.
And,
all right.
And then I think you're out in San Diego. Is that right?
That's right.
So I had my first Stone IPA back in like 2002 or something, whenever it first came out.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? This is amazing. So I started falling in love with IPAs. And then as life went along, you know, as a beer connoisseur that I am, I'm like, it'd be awesome to have my own beer. And I'm like, wait a second. The name Long Snapper would be a kick-ass name for a beer as well. So a couple of years went by and I kept talking to people like, hey, I'd love to build a beer. And they're like, how do you want to do this? I'm like, I don't know. I just want to build a beer, but I would like to do it with somebody who knows more about beer than I do. So I had talked to some people in Chicago about, do you want to go like one of the big boys, a local craft beer, you know, like a brew pub restaurant or whatever. And I lived down the street from Tight Head Brewing and had some few friends that knew Bruce, who knew who runs or owns Tight Head. And I had they have a menu of about 12 great beers, and their two IPAs, Irie IPA and Bear's Choice, are two of my favorites as well. So I drove down the street, sat down and met Bruce, and he's like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to build a beer. He's like, how do you want to do it? I'm like, I don't know. Let's just build a beer. So he said, all right, let's figure this thing out. We have some ideas on our end of how we want to build the beer or build a beer. What do you like? So I sat down with our brewmasters and we said, all right, and I go back to Stone. I was like, the first IPA I had was Stone. I fell in love. Toppling Brewing out of Iowa. They have a Pseudo Sue, which I love.
Yeah.
Those are kind of two of my favorites. And we kept talking about more beers. And he's like, you like more of a West Coast style IPA. I said, okay, if that's what it is. That's what I like. So he and his brewmaster started talking more and more. And they looked at each other and like, wait a minute, we've always been thinking about something like what you're talking about. We have an idea. We can tweak that a little bit. We can build a beer for you. Let's build it and see where it goes. And I'm like, all right, let's figure this out. So we did a handshake deal. He said, let's build the first batch, see if we can sell some, see if people like it. I think you talked about Untapped on there. It's got 3.75. And to me, that's exciting because anybody that gets on one of those sites or apps or whatever, they're just trying to rail you, right? So to me, a 3.75 is not too bad.
No, it's
great. I've got a lot of great reviews.
This beer's fantastic.
And the biggest thing, my biggest critic, my wife, who's not a beer drinker, when I first brought it home, she's like, this is pretty damn good. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
So that's how it came about. So now we've built a brand in the Chicagoland area. We're in a little bit in Iowa, a little bit in, I guess, Wisconsin and Southwest Michigan and Indiana. So
you can get in San Diego if you know the right people.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, exactly. You can get it anywhere, actually.
We shipped it out there to him. Yeah. So you got one yourself there.
Yeah, I love the artwork here. I'm curious. I'm guessing it says a little something about your personality. There's a set of golf clubs, a muscle car, a keg in the back that says crushable. Were these all your ideas? And was this a car you had like in high school, or what's going on?
No. Okay. So the next meeting I had with Tight Head Brewing, they brought their artist in, and her name was Katie Kick. And she's like, okay, let's start with this. I Googled you. What the hell is a long snapper exactly? So she kind of figured it out. And I'm like, well, and I pulled up some pictures, and that one of me on the top of it's an El Camino. I'll tell you about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Showed her that's me. She's like, okay, so what do you, I'm like, you know, Robbie Gold. She's like, yeah, I know Robbie Gold. I'm like, I'm the guy that snapped the ball back to him. So she started to get a little bit more of a gist at what it was. And then liked like kind of that picture, that look, I guess me bent over. I don't know why she liked it, but just kidding. But so the next thing, she's like, we kept talking about my interests, and one was golf and just, you know, stuff and life and what I do. And she's like, what's one thing a lot of people don't know about you? I'm like, I own an El Camino. And she's like, you wait, what? And she's like, what the El Camino? And I pulled up a picture. She's like, oh my God. And you could see her artist brain just working right then. She got back with us in 2 weeks, and almost something identical to that is what she drew up. And we went with it. And Bruce, the owner, and I kind of tweaked it a little bit more. And that's what we came up with. And that's how it came about.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah,
put the keg in the back there.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's never happened before. Yeah, that's
no. Actually, a funny story in college, I had a friend, Lyle Burdine, who had an El Camino he bought for $500. And we might have thrown a keg or two back in there.
Nice. Yeah, right.
Awesome. I love it. So you played for the Bears for a total of 16 years before retiring in 2014. Only 11 players in NFL history have played more games for a single team than you did for the Chicago Bears. But my question is, what's it like being retired in your 30s? Because that's where Dan and I are at now. And we're like, what's that like?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I am now, because the one thing is it's different. You never dreamed that was going to happen. I never dreamed I would play 16 years. But at 38, I'm like, wait, I am 38. So I still do some local media in Chicago, but I kind of call myself retired. But I keep myself busy enough. But the biggest thing is, man, and I tell the young players, is be frugal. Just be frugal as you can while you're playing. Save all your money, and then you can enjoy the fruits of your labor later on. And that's, fortunately, I think you see the palm tree behind me. We're down here at a place in Florida, and we're able to do that. So it's just, I saved every dime I had. That my wife made me save it as well. But we were pretty frugal people, and fortunately, I get to do what I'm doing now. But I get to do what I'd like to do. So that makes it nice. But it is, how old are you guys?
32.
32. All right. You got some time. So I'm 47 now. Yeah, I was 38, 39, but it was different being that age and saying, okay, what the heck is next in life? But, fortunately I saved some cash.
Yeah, that's great. I want to go back. You played college football at Duke. I saw you played some high school basketball as well. I'm a big basketball fan, so I'm curious. I looked up some of the Duke basketball classes there. Grant Hill, I believe, was there when you were there. And then possibly if you were a senior, I think like a Shane Battier, Elton Brand team might have been there. Do you ever go to the gym, hang out there, see Coach K, any of the basketball players, or is it football, basketball completely separate?
No, what was cool, so down the hallway, we had Joey Beard, who was a McDonald's All-American who transferred out of there, and then Jeff Capel, who's now the head coach at Pitt.
The coach, yeah.
They were right down the hallway from me, so we were buddies. And here's actually a really cool story. One story I love telling is that I got a chance to play with the basketball team.
Nice.
So I think this is it was the end of my freshman year. So I'd been talking to Jeff and Joey about, my basketball accolades, and I could shoot and do all that kind of stuff and trying to build myself up. They came down the hallway one night. They're like, hey, listen, tomorrow night we need some guys to play. It's during their off season. They go to this called Card Gym, which is across the street or across the way from, Shesheskyville and all that stuff, in Cameron Indoor Stadium. And they said, hey, will you come play with us? And I'm like, hell yeah. So I'm out there with Grant Hill, Cherokee Parks, Jeff Capel, all these guys. And I'm like, this is amazing. But here's the one I love, and I'll toot my own horn on this. I'm old enough now, I guess I can do it.
Yes.
Cherokee Parks guarded me. You played to 11, right? I had 10 of the 11 points. But here's the deal. I had Grant Hill on my team. So what Grant would do is just drive to the basket and then kick it out to me at the three-point line. Cherokee looking at me, I'm a heavier football player. He's like, he can't shoot. So I drained the first one. So Grant Hill looks at me, he's like, all right, this kid can shoot. So he just keeps doing it and keep dishing it to me. It was one of those days I was hot as I could be, and I scored 10 of the 11 points in one of the games to 11 against Cherokee Parks, and that was pretty amazing. But to follow that up too, we played about 5 or 6 games. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But Grant Hill, so all those players are amazing. Grant Hill was so much better than all the other ones.
Right.
He would play like a game like, all right, I'm just going to play with my left hand.
Yeah.
I'm just going to drive left, shoot left, everything. He'd score all the points. And all these other guys, they're McDonald's All-Americans, Duke basketball players, and he's still schooling them. So that was a blast, man. So I did get to play with him, got to know him pretty well.
Man, that's awesome. I can't imagine just getting assists from Grant Hill. Just draining him in the corner and be like, yeah.
And he's put it like
that's
right
all
here,
day.
You know what I mean?
That's all day.
Exactly.
Start chirping Capel and everyone. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing. Great. So the Patrick Mannelly Award that was founded in 2019, given to the best long snapper in college football. How did that get started? And this beer, I think, was released in collaboration with when the award was coming out, correct?
Was the timing on the beer and that was absolutely perfect. I don't know how it worked out, but it did. But so Kevin Gold, who's an agent in the NFL, has a bunch of specialists, a bunch of long snappers, and then Chris Rubio is kind of the number one teachers of long snappers for young kids and college kids. They came to me and they said, listen, there's a Lou Groza award, there's a Ray Guy award, there's a linebacker award, there's all these awards in football. The long snapper has now become a position. I think at this time now it's like 97% of college teams, the long snapper has a scholarship. So to me, that is a position. And in football now in the NFL, on the 53-man roster, there is one long snapper all the way across the board. When I first started, there was not. You were kind of a backup tight end, backup center, linebacker, whatever it is. So now it is a full position. And they said, listen, these kids need to be recognized. So on the phone call, I'm like, hell yes, let's do this. I'm 100% behind it. And they said, all right, we've talked to some other people as well. and we need to name it after you. And I was like, excuse me, what? Like, whoa, okay. I wasn't expecting that. You know, there's some other great ones in the league and other great ones that have played. I thought maybe they would get named after them, but I said, listen, I'm okay with it. That's fine. If everybody says they want to do it, I will take the name. Thank you very much. But let's run with this. Let's make this happen. Let's get these kids recognized.
Right.
And hopefully in the future, we can get on like those Home Depot awards with everybody else, because it is a position. It is recognized. Nick Saban talks about it. All these coaches understand how important it is. So that's how it got started. And hopefully we can get this thing to a level where it's on par with the other ones, but it's getting there. It's going there. And what's been great is the growth is done from 2019 to what it is now. The recognition. We had Coach Saban congratulate Thomas Fletcher when he won it at our award show. And we have a great award show. We're teamed up with Bernie's Book Bank, who's our nonprofit. Zebra Technologies is our main sponsor. And we've just generated a lot of money and recognition for the award and for Bernie's Book Bank, which has been great.
It's a cool looking award too. Yeah. Did you have any say in like, kind of the?
No, Rubio did. Chris Rubio did. The award is really, really cool. It's like, it's actually, it is my hands on a football. It's life size of my hands on a football.
Oh, really?
Which is kind of cool. So it's just me, and it's cut off. It's like the, what's the Venus de Milo? That's right. I don't know art, but the one where the lady's arms are cut off. It's like
we'll
her arms extended out holding a football. Yeah.
Oh. It's interesting to hear you talk about the position and how it used to be like a afterthought, lineman, linebacker, then doing it. And then you kind of are responsible almost for like revolutionizing the position. I have a quote here from a former coach, Dave Tobe, of yours. Mannelly was a perfectionist. He turned long snapping into a science. He was the first to count rotations of the ball on short snaps so the holder never gets the laces. He also developed cutting edge drills that are used by most special team coaches today. My question is, how do you figure that out? How are you counting the rotations of a ball? What are these skills? And what does it take to become now like an important position, an elite long snapper?
Well, we'll start with developing the skills. That wasn't just me, man. I had some great coaches before. I had a guy in high school, Doc Spurgeon, who helped me develop these drills. This is back in high school, back in 1993. I was starting to work on this to try to perfect the craft just because I enjoyed the process so much. Mm-hmm. I go to college. I get to work with Joe DeForest, who's now a lifer college coach. I think he was a long snap. He was a scab back in '87 when the draft was going on. So I got the chance to work with him in college. So he helped me develop. And then I just took those two guys and then got into the pros. And Keith Armstrong was my special teams coach. And like I said at that time, there really wasn't a true position. So we're all trying to figure it out. We're all working together. So we kind of came up with drills and routines and things to do. And as far as laces, you heard about getting the laces forward, you said Ace Ventura, laces out. Laces out.
Exactly.
So, you work on that. I came up with different drills, like 8 yards, 10 yards, 12 yards, little things to do to work on, how do you put it right? So it's consistent speed every time.
Yeah.
I wasn't one that really counted the laces. I just knew my speed. It was weird. I just knew how fast I need to throw it. So Brad Maynard or whoever the holder was, Adam Polish, that they would catch it with the laces out forward. And then guys started really getting into with the film work and studying, how many rotations they have. I can't even tell you. Some people say they had 2.5, 3.5. I don't even know what mine were. Mm-hmm. I just knew my speed, but I just really enjoyed the process of trying to perfect this position to make it better, make us better, make us all better. And it was a lot of fun.
And you pretty much, did perfect it, right? Per the Bears records, you snapped the ball 2,282 times without a botched snap. Is that accurate?
Wrong. That's incorrect.
Oh, really?
No, we have one bad one. Do you guys remember when we played the 49ers? I think the first time we wore the orange jerseys and the wind was blowing like 45, 40 miles an hour. Robbie kicked the field goal that went up into the stands.
Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
That game. So on a PAT, I had one that kind of came out and wiggled a little or unraveled, and the wind took it. And Maynard, there was no way Maynard was going to catch it, so we messed up a PAT. But yeah, that's the one that stands out. But nobody's perfect, man.
One out of 2,300.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we'll take it.
Not bad. And Robbie Gould too converted 86% of his field goals when you snapped in the ball, as opposed to 75% the first year without him. So that's saying something as well. And I just
take
think
the
that's
credit.
Amazing too. Yeah, take
the credit, man.
We had a good unit. There's a holder in there as well. That's Adam Podlish. That's Brad Maynard. Man, they made me look a lot better than I was.
Okay. I want to talk about the team aspect. Like, I've been in locker rooms myself. Both of us have been in locker rooms, and I'm just curious, seeing that the Bears are no longer going to be in Bourbonnais doing training camp there. And for some reason, the Camino with a keg in the back is like wanting to ask, like, what was going on? What are some stories in Bourbonnais? What are the modern day Bears players missing out on by not having that experience down in Bourbonnais?
You know what? I feel now that, you were locked in a dorm. You were kind of force fed each other to hang out. I mean, we were in the hallways, like after meetings, we would send like a rookie and go get a bunch of McDonald's or Wendy's or whatever and fill up the hallways, and everybody'd come in there and down to the first floor where the linemen and the quarterbacks were and the older guys. We'd all sit around and talk all night. And then some of us would go to the bar across the street and hang out. But but that's what they're missing. They're missing that camaraderie thing, I think, because now you go to Hallis Hall, you have practice, you go home to your family.
Right.
Like my wife's sitting in front of me here, and I love her and my kid to death, but I would not want to go home after practice. That's the last place. I'd love to go to my dorm room, veg out, study. Well, my playbook wasn't much, but everybody else needed to study their playbook, get away from the family, and just eat football, eat, sleep, drink football, and build that team community. But life is different now. Kids are different now. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have Twitter. We didn't really have cell phones until later on in my career. There weren't camera phones. So I understand kind of now why they're doing that. I think there could be more trouble that you guys could get into, but those stories, man, were epic. I mean, there were nights that we would go over to TJ's across the way, TJ Donlands, and just have a blast over there. We'd be somewhat responsible. And then the other thing, what's missing out on that as well, now that I'm in the media, is the interactions we had with the media, the relationships we built with the media, the trust we had with them. And I think guys are missing that. And I think sometimes you see some stories get blown out of proportion. Some truths don't come out. There's just not that relationship between the player and the media that kind of helps the fan, but also helps the player and the media person, whoever that is. And that's what I think is missing most. But man, those were, people talk about when you retire, what do you miss most? Everybody's like a locker room. As hard as training camp was, those are some of the most fun times I've ever had in my life.
Yeah. It seems like a movie premise almost. So like you get the football team down there in like a small town, Illinois, and just kind of like own it for a summer.
Oh, it was we had thousands of fans there.
Right.
And then, you'd see some of them were smart enough that knew or didn't have to go back to the city or where they're from. And they'd come to TJ's, but they'd go to I think it was called the library. There was another one called No Dogs we would go to. That's the one we would sneak away from that nobody knew we were going to if we wanted to just hang out as a team. But, oh, man, we had a blast.
That's awesome. All right. So the Bears haven't been in a Super Bowl in quite some time here. And I'm just wondering, as someone who played in one, what was that like? And how were the conditions for that game? Like, is that just a vivid memory?
Oh man, I remember.
No, it is stuck in my brain. Like, I got lucky to play a lot of games, and I think I can recall almost every play in that game. A lot of games I can't, but just I can recall the bus ride to the stadium, guys. We felt like we were the president. They shut down the expressway. We saw no other cars while we're driving to the game. I'm like, this is the Super Bowl. But then just getting there and walking in, seeing your name played up there and knowing this is the biggest game on the earth and those people are going to be watching, knowing that, Prince is singing at halftime. I think Billy Joel sang the God Bless America, I forgot, maybe it was him. I forgot. See that, maybe it's not that vivid then. But just remembering all those moments of like, holy crap, this is the Super Bowl. And I got lucky to be out there at the coin toss against Peyton Manning, Adam Vinatieri, Dan Marino's out there doing the coin flip, all these cameras. And I'm like, I'm out at the coin flip for the Super Bowl. Like, that was unreal. And then the game starts, obviously, and Devin Hester does what he does. So I know that was amazing. That's when we were like, holy shit. And funny thing is, I'm sitting on the sideline celebrating. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I got to go in and snap the PAT. So I'm kind of running down towards that end zone where he said, I got to go grab my helmet. I turn around and go grab my helmet and run out there. And just, that's when I'm like, oh my God, this really is the Super Bowl. And then you want to talk about conditions. It's the worst rain I've ever played in my entire life. I mean, it was awful. You could change your socks, shoes, whatever, whenever you wanted, just, it would soak through. And it was pretty brutal as far as rain. And that was just, it almost wasn't fair. You wish it would stop. Normally those thunderstorms in Florida, they kind of just roll through. This thing just seemed like it got on top of it and just sat there. And it was ridiculous, but it was a moment I'll never forget, obviously. And it was a great one. And then I have a photo of me, my wife, I don't know where she found it, but it's me walking off and it's like all the confetti falling down. I call it losers confetti. So I still have my cleats with the confetti still stuck on there. Somehow it's like all glued on there.
Oh, that's
kind of cool.
That's a cool piece
of
memory.
One other vivid memory, if you guys don't mind me keep talking.
Of course.
Absolutely.
So it's still raining. We get done with the game and I've got my backpack on. You got to wear a suit. And I'm sitting there and our bus is about 30, 40 yards out and 30, 40 yards to the right. And I'm just like, man, we just lost the Super Bowl. I got to go walk in the rain to the bus. Could this get any worse? This person walks up next to me and she's like, excuse me, are you going to the team bus? would you like me to walk you? I got an umbrella. I'm like, oh, that'd be great. Thank you. So we start walking. The person starts talking, and I'm like, I know that voice. I look down to my right. It's Demi Moore.
Oh, wow.
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 So Demi Moore, and then I look over, and then there's Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah.
And then the two kids, and then behind us is Bruce Willis, and he yells at Demi. He's like, "You hitting on him too?" Something like that.
That's a wild little story.
It's why I'm like, this is the Super Bowl. Like, well, this is where you run into people like that.
Yeah.
And that was just surreal. And she walked me to the bus with her umbrella, and she's like, "Sorry, you lost." And I'm like,
That's
holy shit, Demi Moore just walked me to the bus.
It's like the ultimate Super Bowl story, like losing, going to your bus, escorted by Demi Moore.
Beautiful. Yeah, she was beautiful. It's like, oh, I look over, I'm like, yep, you're as good looking as you are in photos.
Yep. We see that you got one tackle that game. Any recollection of that?
I do. It was number 10. I forgot his name. Wilkinson. I forgot his name. Number 10, but it was Todd Johnson. A lot of tackles when I was getting older were help from the better athletes, kind of forced them to me. If I remember right, Todd Johnson kind of forced them to me, and I got lucky to get the tackle. But that was one where you get up from that moment, you're like, my name's going to be announced now, not for screwing up a snap, but I actually made a play in the Super Bowl.
That's awesome. Yeah, and so you mentioned Devin Hester as well. I got a question for you. Do you think special teams players should be in the Hall of Fame? So I think this is
should, yes,
absolutely.
Punter kickers, and returners for sure. And Devin deserves to go in. I was hoping he went in on the first ballot. I understand why it's got to be tough for the first returner to ever go on the first ballot, but the people that I've talked with that are kind of connected, they feel like he's going to go in, and he should. I mean, he's the greatest returner ever. And the thing about him is, too, guys, he changed the game. I'm talking every game, not just the game in the NFL, but every game we played. Punters hated punting against them. Kickers, the kickoff, they'd squib kick it. If you're a player that can change the way the game is played, you're a Hall of Famer. And if you're that great of your production, that's
unbelievable.
He's a Hall of Famer.
For sure.
Yeah, he was an unbelievable player to watch. Do you have a favorite teammate from your time with the Bears? Any guys you still keep in contact, go on vacation, fishing trips with?
No, we don't do a whole lot of. Well, I mean, we had such a great locker room, man. Olin Kreutz and I came in together in 1998, so he and I are really good buddies. We still do media back in Chicago together. We play golf in the summer quite a bit. A lot of respect for him. I think he has a lot of respect for me. We got a neat friendship. He always jokes. He's like, how does a little old boy from Honolulu and a little old boy from Marietta, Georgia become friends?
Yeah.
Or like you get in an NFL locker room
Football,
and figure it out. But the other thing is, like, I can my daughter, Charles Tillman's daughter, John Tate's daughter, Mike Brown's daughter, Alfonso Boone's daughter, Todd McMillan's daughter, they were all born within like 3 months of each other. So all the wives were real close with each other. And then, Urlacher, Briggs, I mean, everybody, we had such a great locker room. I could pick up the phone right now and ask them anything to be here. They need me there. So I guess my favorite one, or my closest one, I guess, would be Olin. And then after that, it's all of them. We had a very awesome locker room. We had great wives and girlfriends that got along as well.
Is that a tribute to, I mean, Lovie Smith was your coach, I think, for the longest time that you've been in the NFL. Is that a Lovie Smith a result of his coaching, of his kind of chemistry?
It is. And it's also Jerry Angelo who drafted us. I wasn't drafted by Jerry, but most of those guys I'm talking about were drafted by Jerry Angelo. And he was a big believer in building strong culture and a great locker room. And it was fun for us because it made us have a lot of fun and we got along. But I think it helped us quite a bit. We could have and should have won more games. There were a couple injuries there that I'm not going to blame, but that hurt us. With Urlacher when he got injured, Jay Cutler hurt his thumb. But there's things like that maybe we could have been better. But we had a fantastic locker room. It was a lot of fun. But a lot has to do with Lovie allowing us to be us. And a quick story, like we used to play dodgeball in the locker room after Saturday practice. And he came out and he's like, Jiminy Christmas, guys, what the heck's going on here? He's playing dodgeball. We went out and won the game like 40-10 or 40-20.
Yeah.
So that next Saturday after the next walkthrough, everybody looks at Urlacher and like, what are we doing? He's like, we're playing dodgeball. So from then on, like we were able to play just games like that. And it brought everybody together from the long snapper to the center, to the linebacker, to Julius Peppers. We all talk.
That's
I
awesome.
love that. I got one game that I got to ask you about, because I think like for a modern day Bears fan, your time that you were on the roster are some of the best rosters we've seen, some of our favorite teams. The game that always stands out to me is the Arizona comeback.
Oh man. Yeah.
Was there belief on the sidelines, or did it take a couple of those scores to be like, holy shit, we might have a chance here? Or was it always, we got faith in each other?
Well, I don't know if you've heard the story about Olin talking to us at halftime, but I think it was more disbelief of how bad we were playing, because we were on a roll. I think maybe we were undefeated at the time or whatever. We were on a roll. We're looking like we're not this bad. We're just having the worst day we could possibly have offensively. And we knew we weren't that bad. So halftime came in and Olin just said it, like, everybody get your head out of your ass. We can do this. We're good enough. And obviously the defense took over and Devin had the return, but I think it was more disbelief of how bad we were playing. And then we clicked it, and I think we showed how good we really were, and that's why we ended up in the Super Bowl being the best team in the NFC. But that game, just seeing how great talent, Urlacher ripping the ball out, Charles Tillman ripping the ball out, Mike Brown scoring a touchdown, Mark Anderson causing a fumble, Devin Hester doing his thing, that your great players came out and said, F it, man, we're taking over this game. We're going to get this done. And to prove that we were the better team that day. And not to Denny Green, he didn't believe that, but
crown him.
That was just, man, that game. Yeah, that's another vivid memory. That was amazing.
So the
NFL sad thing is, guys, I think I got like 7 or 8 tickets for buddies, my golf friends from Chicago, to come out there. They went and played golf.
Yeah.
And they were kind of up in the nosebleeds because visitors, we don't get good seats. They left in like the third quarter.
Oof.
They went to the bar or some steakhouse or something to have a blast.
Oof.
They texted me in the morning like, sorry, man, we did leave the game. We got to see it at the bar, but we left the game, like, you dumbasses.
That's one of the all-time games.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the NFL draft was this last weekend. I want to think back to your draft back in 1998. You were drafted in the 6th round. Do you have a little chip on your shoulder coming into the?
Yeah, right. No, I was so excited to. So my thing being a long snapper. So I played O-line. I started 2 years at Duke. I was left guard, left tackle my junior year, left tackle my senior year. Was an okay college player. I wasn't that great. So I guess I was somewhat athletic. So I'm like, oh, maybe I can get drafted for that. But I knew that long snapping would be my foot in the door. And then I had heard some rumblings, hey, you might get drafted. You might even be drafted in the 5th round. I'm like, holy shit, if I go in the 5th round, that's ridiculous. I wasn't expecting that. Well, the 6th round started coming along. I got a call from the Green Bay Packers. They said, have anybody called you yet? I'm like, no. They're like, well, we might pick you up early in the 7th round. And the Bears actually showed the most interest all through the pre-draft stuff. And got a call from them, and they said, hey, check out your screen. Your name's going across it. We just drafted you. I was like, hell yes. Awesome. I was so excited to go there, but no chip on my shoulder, man. Honestly, to be drafted in the NFL is an honor. It's honor. Right. That was the thing. It's just to say, hey, I'm an NFL draft pick. And there's things like that. You still pinch yourself, being a little kid playing football in your front yard, and you're like, I'm going to be an NFL player one day. No way. And then it happens. So and to be drafted was even cooler.
Right.
Yeah.
That draft class was pretty stacked. 4 Hall of Famers: Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Randy Moss, Alan Faneca. So I feel like players always put their draft class up against others.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We've done that. I've done that.
The Bears draft class was pretty good. Yeah. Like, where does it stand up? I mean, those are some heavy hitting names there, especially Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Randy Moss. I mean, those are all-time greats.
Sure.
Reflecting on the draft class, what do you think? Stands up? I mean, Olin was there as well at local Chicago. Curtis Enos, I mean, just as a fan, him being our 1st round pick is. Oh, man.
It's unfortunate, man. His knee ate itself. If he didn't hurt his knee, I think he would have had a nice career as a running back. And then Tony Parrish was our safety. We traded him too soon, in my opinion. Funny thing is, they said he's not a ball hawk. I think he went and had 6 interceptions the next year with the San Francisco 49ers. So yeah, we did have a good draft class. I mean, and then Chris Draft, I think, was our 6th round pick as well.
6th round,
played, 8 or 9 years in the NFL. So we had some good players.
Alonzo Mays was 4th.
Yeah, that didn't really work out as well for him. I think he had a little bit of growing up to do, and I think he would probably agree with that. But he was, again, just a sick talent. I mean, you see all these kids come in, you're like, oh my God, they're unbelievable, and just unfortunately didn't work out for him.
Yeah. So what did you catch any of the Bears draft this past weekend? Do you have any thoughts on kind of where the Bears are at right now and who they selected?
It's just, it's unfortunate you don't have a 1st round pick, but I get the Justin Fields trading up for him, and that's, we all got our fingers crossed that he'll work out. But I did like the fact that Ryan Poles traded back and got 11 picks.
Yeah.
That gives him more of a chance, because going in this draft, I'll be honest with you, I got asked to do some draft coverage with the score, 670 the score, and I'm like, I don't, you got a couple second round, or what at that time was like a second, third. We didn't have any picks. I'm like, who am I going to study? Who are they going to get? I don't know. And I'd like to bring more to the table of maybe breaking down these players. And I was like, I don't know if I have time to do all the work like a Daniel Jeremiah does to study all these guys. But I think what he did to me, what he got was the two best players on the draft board. Obviously, corner was a big need. I think O-line's a big need, but it kind of is, I think, where you weigh the biggest need and what the best player on the board is. And I think they did a good job getting a corner. Will he work out? I don't know. I hope so. The safety, just watching some tape on him, he looks pretty darn good. Will he work out? I don't know. Jones kid, the receiver, I like what I see from him as a returner as well. I think that's what's great, is he can be a kind of a two-way guy, as gadget guy maybe early on in his career and be a good returner for him. But people talk about they drafted 2.5, 3 starters with those first 3 picks. Yes, because they have so many damn holes.
Yeah.
So these kids
they're going to have to be out there.
So I might go back to fingers crossed. I just hope they turn into good players. I hope they turn into good NFL players. I mean, shoot, we had Mike Brown in the second round, Charles Tillman, Lance Briggs, Olin Kreutz. Those are 4 great players that turn into lifers as Bears. Let's hope these kids do the same. And then as far as later on the draft, I think you grab as many as those you can, because people can hit. I just look at that. I was thinking about this the other day, and like the O-line rooms I've been in, we had Chris Valerio was a 5th round pick. You guys might not remember him, but it was right at the beginning of my career. I think he played 11 years in the NFL. Roberto Garza, we picked him up from Atlanta. He was a late 4th round pick, played 13 years in the NFL, 14 years in the NFL. Big Cat Williams, undrafted free agent, played 12, 13 years for the Bears. And I'm missing another one. Charles Leno, another guy, still playing in the league, a late round pick. So I think when you can accumulate those, and to me, especially linemen, those are guys that can work out. And I think he did a good job doing that. I mean, there's some linemen on that list, and we'll see if they work out. And I love the fact he got a punter.
Yeah.
Needed it. Yeah. And as somebody who was taken in the 6th round, right, as one of the greatest Bears of all time. So, I mean, we took some shots there at the end, and I think Bears fans should be excited about, the haul that he had. It's most players that we've drafted in one draft since 2008. So I think it's going to be a good.
You got to hit on
class,
some
hopefully.
of them, right? Out of 11,
you got to.
4 of them. You give me 4 starters out of that. The last 4 to 6 years, I'll be really happy with that.
Definitely.
You think their trajectory is upward right now with the new front office, new head coach?
I hope. I mean, unfortunately, I think since I've left, that the Trestman era came in, Fox era. It's just they've missed so many times. I'm hoping they just get it right, and I hope that I hope they get it right. We keep seeing this every 4 or 5 years, 6 years that we're hoping for the best, and it keeps not working out. We keep redoing it. We just I hope it works out. And I think the biggest hope to me is Justin Fields. You watch the NFL now, you've got to have you need a franchise quarterback, or just some kick-ass defense to win in this league. But most of all, I think you need a quarterback, and let's hope he develops into one. Hopefully Luke Getsy can be the guy to get him to that level. And from what I hear, he works his tail off, and he's a good teammate and all that stuff. So that's half the battle. But let's see if he can put all that together.
Yeah. Do you have any coaching offers out there? I mean, you have these drills, consulting with special teams. The Bears ever call you in, take a look?
No, I did towards the end of my career. Dave Tobe and I are really tight. So some of those things you talked about Dave Tobe earlier, some of them are lies. No, I'm just kidding. He and I
he gets paid to say that.
Yeah, no, we had a great relationship. And at the end of my career, he mentioned, actually, when I retired, he said, "Do you want to get into coaching?" And I'm like, I don't know if I do right now. But and the reason why I said that too is we had Joe DeCamillis come in my last year, and he and I got along. We were 1 year together. I had a tremendous amount of respect for him, played a lot of games against him. He's a guy that I hit it off with as well. And he talked a lot. He's like, "Listen, man, you could bring a lot to the special teams. You got a lot of knowledge. I think the guys respect you. You deliver it well." He's tooting my horn. I'm like, "All right, whatever." He's like, "But I would love to have you on my staff after you retire." I said, "Coach, I don't know." He said, "Well, hold on." He goes, if you're hesitant at all, if you're not 110% in to be an NFL coach, do not do it. He goes, our hours, you have to have the passion. You have to buy a house on wheels. You'd be ready to move, all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, I'm just not ready to do it. I've got a young daughter, and I guess she was finishing up 5th grade at the time. And I said, no, I want to be a dad. You hear about athletes being a dad. And I just said, listen, I can't do that. I cannot give you a full Patrick Mannelly to do this. And I'm one that if I'm in, I'm in. And I just feel like if I did that, I would take away from my family. And I just couldn't do it. But, maybe down the road there's something. I don't know. But right now, she's a sophomore for the next 2 years, that's a no. But I have done like one-on-one coaching with snappers and to help them out. I do enjoy like this little one-on-one stuff, helping guys transition from college to the pros because it is so different. But as far as getting in like on a coaching staff, no, not yet. No.
Gotcha.
All right, Pat, thanks so much for coming on. Again, he's at Patrick Mannelly on Twitter. Pick up some long snapper IPA. If you haven't had it, you should try it. It's delicious.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
good.
Pat. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, guys, man. It's great chatting with you.
All right. Thanks again to Pat Mannelly for coming on. Great conversation. Loved having him on. Awesome guest. He gave us his thoughts on kind of the draft and how it went. Evan, I'm curious, kind of your thoughts. I saw you posting out there some of your overviews of these players. How do you think we did?
I really liked this draft. I kind of mentioned it a little bit to Pat there. I really liked, day 3, which would have been kind of day 2 for the Bears. Poles flipping, 3 draft picks into 8 players via 4 trades with 4 different teams. So it gave the Bears their biggest haul of, draft capital, 11 players total since 2008, the largest, amount of players that they picked up there. So I really liked Gordon and Brisker with the first 2 picks because our secondary was so bad. We were ranked 27th in opponents' yards per attempt, dead last in passer rating allowed last season. 31 passing touchdowns they allowed. Were tied for the second most in franchise history last year. So they were just atrocious in the secondary last year. So if you can get two guys that are, starters, and I think Poles had said Gordon in particular was somebody that they did mock drafts kind of leading up to the draft. And there's only one time that he fell to their pick and he was like, just ignore this because this isn't going to happen. He's not going to be there. And then he was. So I thought that was really interesting. And they were super psyched to get him. So he didn't allow a touchdown in 696 coverage snaps during his college career. So, I mean, like, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'll take
that's the kind of stuff we were talking about pre-draft though, of like GM speak, I had no idea this guy was going to be there when we were picking. Like, so happy he fell to us. No idea. That's GM talk, but
it seems like his stats back it up though. So another interesting thing I saw was that Poles slept at Hallis Hall on Friday night as he navigated his way through the draft. So that was interesting. And then another thing was Thursday, the first day of the draft, day 1, he didn't pick up his phone at all. Nobody called him and he didn't call anyone else. So he's sticking to his plan the whole time. The guy was patient the whole time. I mean, that's just the word we've been using for him this whole offseason is patience and, trading back. And he had said pre-draft how deep this O-line class was. And he got 4 guys there towards the end of the draft. Brought in another punter to have a little competition there, beefed up our secondary. We got the wide receiver that we've been looking for. Hopefully this guy, Velus Jones, can play
a lot of talk about his age,
slot, and be a return man. But at the very least, I think he'll be the return guy. He's a little bit older.
25.
So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see, how that plays out. But if he can play, he can play. And if we get 5 years out of him, that would be amazing. So that's, what I'm thinking. I guess Poles said he wouldn't rule out another signing of a veteran receiver also to help Fields.
I hope so.
So hopefully we pick somebody else up there in free agency. But do you got any thoughts on where they ended up?
No, I was happy with trading back as well. Try and take as many swings at talent as possible when you are rebuilding, just filling up that roster with youthful talent. The team has been pretty terrible the last couple of years. So why not, right? Why not trade back and get as many players into that room that are hungry, that are going to have an open competition, and just really have that competitive spirit like back in the locker room? Because I think it was definitely getting stagnant. People were definitely becoming, expecting that they're going to get snaps and expecting that they're going to be on the field no matter how bad their play was. So I think it's a good thing for the organization to take this direction. I was surprised at the 2 defensive backs going with our first 2 picks, but after thinking about it, I'm 100% okay with it for how bad our secondary was. And also, for some reason, I keep coming back to the Legion of Boom and Seattle. And I'm like, I think this is what Poles is looking at and kind of a blueprint with that early Russell Wilson, Seattle Seahawk kind of recipe there, where you just have like a legit defense and you have a quarterback who's a little mobile, can extend plays and just bomb it to some fast receivers. we'll see. I'm happy with it. We'll see what happens here. Who we sign. I know a couple. The Philly had that offensive lineman who got released. A lot of receivers are still out there, free agency. I am hopeful that we sign one. I'm wanting Will Fuller. Throw him on there with Pringle. You got Valez, and then you got Mooney as well. All those guys can go vertical, and then possibly just a reception receiver, slot receiver, somebody you can rely on. But I like it. I don't care that he slept at House Hall. That's fine. It doesn't do anything for me. Or that he didn't take any phone calls. But the draft has become such theater that like those things matter and are talked about now. But I think it's good. Got a lot of players turning the roster over.
Showed his dedication, Dan. He was spending the night there. The first round was crazy. So,
I'd rather you have a good night's sleep, go to a comfortable bed, like go home.
Yeah. Well, that's our show today. Thanks again to our guest, Patrick Mannelly, for joining us. For Dan Slook, I'm Evan Bierman. You've been listening to the Domestic Draft Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to rate the show. You can find us on Twitter at Domestic Draft, on Instagram at Domestic Draft Podcast. Our website is domesticdraft.com. And you can watch the show on YouTube. Just search up Domestic Draft and drop us a sub. Thanks again for listening.
Cheers.